We got our first hints about how Xbox is going to use an NPU. Happy Friday, friends! It is nearly the end of August. Gamescom has come, and Gamescom has gone. And now it is the news has dropped. It is all behind us, but there's a lot to dive into. A little bit of tech news this week, and then we'll get into the juicy details, including how we got our first hints about how NPUs are going to be used on the next generation of Xbox hardware. Hopefully, all of you had a wonderful week. Let's dive into the news here. So kicking things off, Copilot on Windows app now adds the thing we all have kind of been waiting for, which is semantic file search. However, you have to use the Copilot app. It's not just baked into the OS. Like, you got to go do like the thing inside the app, and that's good. I'm assuming this will eventually come to like all of like Windows search, because that is where it's actually useful, unless Microsoft is going to do the Microsoft thing and they're going to force you to try to use Copilot rather than the built-in Windows search, which is a ridiculous phrase to mutter. But we all know that that's kind of true. That's like what Microsoft likes you to do. It's like, don't use that start menu search or that thing that's on your taskbar. No, you say. Use our fancy Copilot app so we get engagement and better AI usage. And you can see the future of search, even though it's such a mundane thing that it should just be better anyways. However, speaking of whatever Copilot stuff, Microsoft has announced a pretty big deal, and it's more of a change about how a previous deal was working. So Microsoft obviously has had the Surface deal with the NFL. They're changing that up to be more of a Copilot deal. So this is, again, Microsoft's de-emphasis off of Surface hardware and onto that Copilot brand. It's not all that surprising. I mean, Surface has already been not written off literally, but de-escalated and deprioritized, and Copilot is the big thing. And so NFL, Copilot, maybe if you don't like the run up the middle that your coach selected, like Zach Taylor always does with the Bengals, you can now blame Copilot for choosing a bad play or something like that. Speaking of Copilot, it's coming to more places and more faces. So it has been spotted by Phantom of the Earth inside of File Explorer, where you can see that little icon. It was actually kind of hard to find. If you look at the individual files, readme.docs there in the middle, you can see that Copilot button that'll allow you to, I don't know, Copilot-y the text. I'm sure it allows you to semantic search it or something like that. But there's Copilot's going to be everywhere. They want those clicks. They want you using AI. They want to justify their investment at the end of the day. And of course, how could we leave out the start menu too? So there you go. Just start asking Copilot. Why search, friends, when you could ask Copilot? These are the questions that Microsoft asks itself every single day. Why search when Copilot exists? And yeah. Well, anyways, that's Microsoft for you. Anyways, that's like the big sort of tech news stuff, like I can't really enunciate there, coming out. Let's dive into Gamescom, because that's where a lot of the stuff was happening this week. So we finally got the date for the release date of ROG, Xbox, the Ally, and Ally X, which these things look fine. They look like nice pieces of hardware. They look like they're well built. They look like they will play games. The problem is that there's still not an Xbox, if you will. Like they're still missing. Yeah, they can play some Xbox games and they can play a lot of PC games and you can do all the PC things, but it's not the full Xbox catalog, and that's always going to be the Achilles heel of this stuff. And so yeah, that's it. Now the pricing has reportedly leaked out, I think, to a Best Buy posting. We'll see, but the ROG basic vanilla version is going to be potentially $549 dues. And the Ally X, the beefy boy, is going to be $900 dues. $900 dues. So, it's hard, because console gaming used to be this value proposition, and maybe it still is, and somebody's going to point out, Brad, a 5090 from NVIDIA, the top enchilada for when it comes to PC gaming, and you throw in the top of the line AMD chip, and you're looking at $2,500. That's $1,500 more dollar dues than that Ally X. And you're not wrong. The only place you're wrong is that you don't need a 5090 to play Call of Duty. You don't need even a 4090 to play Call of Duty. A 3090 would do just fine with really good graphics. And a 3090 is still expensive, so get a 3070 and you probably be fine. It's more of the $600 price points for these things, $549, is here to stay, right? PlayStation just raised their pricing by another $50, so they're in that $499 and on up, so $500 pricing. The Switch 2, another $500 device. Like, these things are expensive. Everything is expensive, and that value prop that the Xbox Series S, which I will still continue to argue is the best value in gaming, it's why I own 2 of them, is going to be a thing of the past. Anyways, these pieces of hardware come with an NPU from AMD. Now, this is the notable thing here is based on everything Microsoft is talking about doing, NPUs are part of the future hardware stack for Windows and gaming, for that matter. So what are they doing? What are they doing? Well, they're upscaling older games to be higher resolution. Dynamically, I guess it might be the wrong way to phrase it. But however, this means you can take your old 720p games and potentially make them 1080p or 4K. We'll have to wait and see how it works in practice and function and everything else, and the frame interpolation and everything like that. However, this is like the first time we're seeing it actually in purpose devices and used for the thing that will most likely be used for the next generation Xbox. I almost guarantee the next generation Xbox will have an NPU. But why, Brad? But why? Because AMD is making it. AMD is building all the NPUs. AMD wants you building NPU-based software and hardware and everything else, and so that is going to be part of that story. It's going to be Microsoft's narrative of, hey, we're bringing that backwards catalog not just to your device, but we are making it better with AI, and it will look prettier. At least it might look prettier. Sometimes these things go off the rails and the fragments are a little funky, but yeah, it was nice to see that NPU called out, and specifically how it's going to be utilized in this scenario. And then you can just make the justification like, hey, we know it's coming. We know it's coming to the next one. So other things you might already know by now about Call of Duty Black Ops Vault Edition, $100 dues. But anyways, this game is coming in November, and I am convinced that this might be the most competition that this game, Call of Duty series, has had in a while. The Black Ops 6 is good. It's also going to have Helldivers to compete against. All the Helldivers will be a little aged, right? Helldivers comes out, is it next week? Yes, I think it is. What, Tuesday? I want to say the 26th, something like that. I am going to be picking that one up, I think. And so here we go. Like, Call of Duty is going to have some pretty stiff competition. And I gotta tell you, I didn't see any Beavis or Butthead skins in Call of Duty Black Ops 7. Although the developer says we are listening to feedback about this, and we'll make they'll make this. The game will not launch with any dumb skins until Season 1 arrives. Until they need to juice the monetary side of it. And they're addicted to the skins. People buy them. Like, it's one of those things. I get why they keep selling them, because every time I play a game, it's littered with them, people playing. What they should do is just sell an option to turn it off. Like, that is the whole circle of life right there. Let me turn them off and I'll pay money. I don't know. I don't know if I actually would, but anyways, there you go. Other big things coming out of GamesCom is actually that the Indiana Jones DLC and other content is coming to the Switch 2, which, by the way, they did not announce that Black Ops 7 was coming to the Switch 2. And so if you remember the whole thing, Microsoft's supposed to be bringing Call of Duty over to the Switch. So there you go. Try not to yawn on that one. I'm doing this late at night on Thursday. Late at night, the kids in bed, everybody's in bed in my house, and the dog's in bed. Anyways, we will see. So there was no Black Ops. Now, granted, I understand that game development is complicated and difficult and takes time, and it may not just be possible to do it for the launch, but maybe we'll see Call of Duty arrive on the Switch too. But as of right now, the first title from Microsoft is going to be the Indiana Jones series, and I mean, it makes sense for the Switch 2 audience. So also, speaking of handhelds, Microsoft put up a post about compatibility for these things. So you can go through like a certification process. It really talks about intuitive text input, accurate iconography, text legibility, default settings, and design things. And so you got to think about it too, that this is running more Windows than Xbox, right? The Xbox OS, I point over to my Xbox, is a version of Windows, but it's stripped out. It's not what you think of as Windows, whereas these devices are more Windows than they are Xbox. And so by having these default configurations will probably help keep the layouts and from accidentally leaving the Xbox experience, if you will, unless it's really intentional. So there you go. Other things this week were that Xbox are hinting that Xbox Cloud Gaming will become more affordable, potentially a cloud-only SKU of Game Pass. That seems logical. I mean, I'm sure there's a market for that. To me, that feels more mobile-ish, not so much like I'm going to buy it for my console. I'm going to buy it for this thing, for my phone at the end of the day. And so that to me seems like the more logical place for a cloud gaming subscription to make like sense as they bring their store online eventually, which we're assuming they are still going to do. So there you go. Those are the big headlines of the week, friends, but always my favorite part are the questions, and there are several of them, including a bunch of good ones. They're always good. What am I saying? So Mr. PK with a triple droppage this week, spread across the different things, but we'll start with his first one. It says, did you hear anything interesting from GamesCom? That would be the NPU stuff, actually is really of interest to me, that you're interested in outside the Order of Giants DLC for Indiana Jones. Are you completing the Great Circle so you can get ready for the DLC? I think I think Helldivers will keep me from the DLC for a little bit, or at least completing the Great Circle. I think that's where we're at. Captain EWC says, what do you think are the chances that the full back catalog of Halo games comes to the Switch 2 or PlayStation versus the new remakes? I think, so here's the more logical process, I would think. Microsoft will make the newer remakes available, and if they do well, then I think you would see more of the catalog coming across. Not to mention, and there's some logic behind this, because I don't know enough about the back catalog, like the older, like original titles. The reason where I'm going with this is, like, if they're building new remakes and doing that stuff, they already know how to bring things over to PlayStation using that current stack. If they have to go back to the older games, they might have to modify some things. I'm not candidly quite sure, but if they're doing the new things, they can already look at how they did the other new things and be like, there should be strong parallels there to bring it over. At this point, I wouldn't say it's impossible. Is it going to be the immediate thing that they bring over? I don't think so. I think they will continue with their sort of all platforms, all launches at the same time mentality that we've been seeing from them. Mr. PKI with his second question, he says, what do you think of the new Pixel 10 phones? Are they going to be a hit with the new cameras? I think they look fine. I mean, they look decent devices at the end of the day. It's very Xbox and PlayStation. Like, am I going to go buy a Pixel? No. I mean, I'm happy with... Oh, no. Whew. That was close. I'm going to... Wow, I thought for sure I just shattered my screen. That's what happens when you do this late at night. I dropped my phone, and it did not appear to break at all. So, Mr. PKI, let's just pop this out of the case here. Nope. I think we are good. I for sure thought that sounded like the entire screen cracked. But I think we're good. That's why we're good. We're sticking with the iPhone. I'm not going to do that again. I mean, that landed on concrete. Although it landed, like, perfectly face down, and I do have a case on there. Yeah, so that works. So if you're on the audio side, I dropped my iPhone onto the concrete down here, and that was almost bad. Anyways, the new Pixel phones look fine, but I'm sticking with the iPhone that just survived that drop. So, Widia Santos says, so this week, Sony raised the price of the PlayStation 5 in the US, completing the circle of all three major manufacturers raising the price of their key consoles, and which point... You point out being one of the differences between the generations and previous console generations. I had a video this week that says, hey, look, typically prices drop, but this time they're all going up. But now the landscape looks completely different. I know you have been watching what has been happening for the better part of a decade, but I won't ask you what changed. That's the subject of a book. My question is, do you think that it was a single event that caused the change, or do you think it was a slow buildup, a combination of different effects? So there's a lot that goes into these pricing of consoles that are beyond just the literal, like, building of them. So first off, the R&D has gone up a rather significant amount. So just building consoles, like the research and development side of it, why has it gone up? Well, it takes more people. You're not building linear games. You're building 3D accelerated games. Like, they're looking at NPUs. They got to look at, they're looking at all different types of performances. They need higher and beefier GPUs, which takes more time and takes more effort. And so building games or developing games has taken more time and costs more money and everything else. And so Microsoft and Xbox and Sony and PlayStation and Nintendo and their Switch, they can't afford to lose money on hardware like they used to be able to, because it was like, hey, game development was like a fixed cost price sort of thing, whereas now you have games that cost $100 million. So they can't afford to lose money on hardware like they used to be able to, because it's harder to recoup that at the end of the day. So you have that aspect. You have the natural inflation. You have potentially tariffs that are impacting things. You have cost of manufacturing is going up. Everything's just gotten more expensive. And so their margins on hardware have eroded to losing money for a lot of the time. to games costing so much more that there's just no money left on the table to absorb any of these cost differentiations. And it seems like the economies of scale that we hear beaten into our brains so much, if you produce more, they'll cost less. It seems like they're making fewer consoles, so that economies of scale just hasn't really worked out. And so is it a single event? No, I think it's just a culmination of several different factors, a lot of different competing forces within the market, and there you go. I think that's how it is. It's a good question, though. It's a really good question, because what made this generation different than, say, the last generation? You could say COVID and all that stuff. That is absolutely part of it, but it's a fair point and good observation. So Yannick says, Xbox Series X is almost impossible to find in stock in the EU at online retailers and brick and mortar stores over the past weeks and months. What could be the reason? I think it's because Microsoft is making fewer consoles. I genuinely believe that. I think they have scaled down those ambitions, so we're late in the cycle of this next generation console. Got to remember, they didn't do like a PS5 Pro. They didn't do any of that revving. And so it's just the same thing. I think they're just producing far fewer, and they're selling them to markets, or putting them in markets where they know they're going to sell and not have to pay those inventory charges. It's hard to say when you say the EU, because there's so many different countries over there. But you're not the first person I have heard say that stock in the EU continues to be limited and has been for some time. Whew, I'm still looking at this phone, making sure it's all right. I think I dodged a bullet there, friends. I really do. I really thought that thing shattered. So, anyways, like I said, we're keeping it all in one take. It was a good week. It was a good week. Hopefully, all of you had a wonderful week. And as always, my friends, make sure to keep it subscribed here, because only BS on this podcast is me.